Around 700 kilometers south of Cairo, across the Nile River from the town of Aswan, is the ancient Egyptian site of Qubat al-Hawa.
It's situated very close to the western edge of the Nile and looks like a huge sand dune rising up from the riverbank.
Perched on top of the hill is a small domed shrine that gives the site its name, Qubat al-Hawa, which means Dome of the Wind.
The dome dates back to 2500 BCE. While conducting fieldwork nearby, a team of archaeologists discovered something incredible, which dated back to the Byzantine era.
They find the remains of ancient crocodiles. It's a bizarre sight.
And it's not just a couple of crocodiles. They find 10 in total, laid side by side. 5 are just heads, but one is a nearly complete specimen, measuring about 2 meters long. The others range from 1.8 to 3.5 meters and are in various states of preservation.
After analyzing the shape of the skulls and the arrangement of the bony plates called scutes, the team determined that there were not only one, but 2 different species of crocodile present.
They found West African and Nile crocodiles, both of which were native to the area. They're very similar in appearance, but West African crocodiles tend to be smaller and less aggressive than their Nile counterparts, which are estimated to be responsible for up to 200 deaths each year.
On average, Nile crocodiles are between 4 and 4.5 meters long, weigh around 400 kilograms, and have a lifespan of 50 to 60 years in the wild. While West African crocodiles are typically between 1.5 and 2.5 meters long and have a slightly shorter lifespan.
Although West Africa crocodiles can still be found throughout Central and West Africa, they have vanished from the Nile region. This is probably because of climate change or human activity.
The crocodiles were remarkably well preserved due to the extreme heat and arid conditions of the desert, which aids in preventing rot and tissue damage over long periods. Examination of the crocodile remains revealed that some of them had bone fractures and lesions, evidence of traumatic injury.
One of the crocodiles has a healed fracture on its dorsal ribs and 2 healed fractures on its ventral ribs. Another has a healed fracture on its fibula and lesions on its left metatarsal and right metacarpal. But these injuries wouldn't have been severe enough to kill them. They were likely the result of territorial fights.
None of the bodies show signs that they suffered a violent death at the hands of humans or other animals. So what happened to these crocodiles?
Further investigation found small fragments of linen with the bodies, mostly eaten away by insects.
Egyptians were known to wrap human bodies in linen as part of the burial process. Its presence suggests that someone buried these crocodiles here for a reason.
Ancient crocodile remains have been found in other parts of Egypt, most famously at Komombo, approximately 50 kilometers north of Qubat al-Hawa. The town contains a temple dedicated to the god Sobek, who manifested as a crocodile.
Thousands of crocodiles have been excavated around Komombo, and many were found to be wrapped in linen as part of the mummification process. So it's logical to conclude that the bodies found at Qubat al-Hawa aren't just regular crocodiles, they're crocodile mummies.
Animal mummification practices were widespread throughout ancient Egypt. Cats, baboons, cows, hawks, and even frogs have all been discovered within tombs.
They actually had breeding programs that supplied a stream of different animals, specifically to be killed and mummified. It's been estimated that some 70 million animal mummies were produced over 1,200 years, from around 800 BCE to 400 CE.
And when animal supply was low, some shrewd entrepreneurs produced and sold fake mummies. The linen wrappings were stuffed with things like eggshells, sticks, and feathers.
Along with the linen, the team also discovered small pieces of rope around the remains.
The rope means that the crocodiles could have been tied up before death, indicating that they could have been captive animals. In terms of how they were mummified, they could have been simply buried in the sand in order to desiccate or mummify naturally.
Further testing is needed to determine their exact age. But the bodies have no traces of resin, which was used extensively in mummification starting around 300 BCE during the Ptolemaic period.
When they investigate further, the team notices that the croc mummies are surrounded by simple rock structures. That it's actually a rudimentary tomb that's part of a much bigger complex. But why were they buried here?
Below the domed shrine and built into the hill is one of the most densely packed cemeteries of ancient Egypt, with hundreds of tombs dating as far back as 2500 BCE.
It's called the Tombs of the Nobles, and it's a truly remarkable place, with 4 stories of burial sites gouged into the sandstone.
Many of the tombs are connected, most likely by family. And although they aren't as well preserved as other Egyptian burial sites, there are hieroglyphic texts and painted scenes that tell stories about the lives of their occupants.
Most of the crypts follow the same basic floor plan: an entrance hall, a room with pillars, and a passage that leads to a burial chamber.
The ones in the top tiers tend to be a bit more humble, while the lower ones can be quite lavish. The crocodiles were found lower down, so maybe that means they were mummified and buried as status symbols for their owners in the afterlife.
For ancient Egyptians, possessing exotic animals showed wealth and influence. At the ancient site of Hierakonpolis, just over 100 kilometers to the north, excavations have unearthed the remains of elephants, leopards, baboons, and even hippos near the tombs of prominent citizens.
The Egyptians were known to keep dogs, cats, and other animals. And in a few rare cases, if a pet died before its owner, it was mummified and placed in a tomb to wait for its master to keep him or her company in the afterlife. But there is no evidence that the Egyptians kept crocodiles as pets. They were feared as very dangerous creatures.
One Egyptian ruler, Prince Thutmose, went to great lengths to ensure his beloved cat was afforded the kind of lavish lifestyle in the afterlife as it was accustomed to whilst alive.
The cat is buried in its own limestone sarcophagus, ornately decorated with various scenes and hieroglyphics. At the back, a cat is shown at a table piled high with offerings to the gods, and a lotus flower, the symbol of resurrection.
But the crocodile mummies are just buried in the ground, so it doesn't appear that they were treated like the pampered pets of the upper echelon of Egyptian society. What is going on here?
A tomb of crocodile mummies, discovered beneath the domed shrine at Kubat al-Hawa, left experts baffled and in search of answers. Mummified animals were often dedicated to the gods with whom they were associated, and could have acted as intermediaries to carry a dedicator's prayer to that god.
We think that such animals were raised in temples and sold to worshippers for this purpose, to serve as votive offerings. So mummified crocodiles might have carried prayers to Sobek, the crocodile god.
The ancient Egyptians were known to worship Sobek, a deity frequently depicted as a human with a head of a crocodile, who has a temple in his name at Kom Ombo.
Sobek was a very important god. The Egyptians were afraid of crocodiles, so they offered him various things in an attempt to please him.
People who lived along the river relied on its flooding to fertilize their crops. They believed their offerings were necessary to satisfy Sobek so that he would create an adequate flood.
To give an idea of how seriously the Egyptians took these offerings, there were crocodile priests whose sole purpose was to mummify crocodiles and offer them to the gods. They were treated and prepared virtually the same way as human mummies.
One mummy excavated at Komombo was found to have the leg of a cow in its stomach. This suggests that it was fed by humans, because in the wild, crocodiles mainly eat fish, small mammals, and small reptiles.
This crocodile was also found to have over 25 mummified hatchlings on its back. It's likely this was meant to symbolize crocodile mothers in the wild, in order to represent fertility.
Taking into consideration the meat found in its stomach, as well as the hatchlings, this croc was probably a manifestation of Sobek, and may have even lived in the temple dedicated to him.
Some offerings were considered physical manifestations of Sobek. Sacred crocodiles were raised in captivity and respected as living representations of the crocodile god.
It's likely that the crocodile mummies at Qabat al-Hawa were votive offerings. This is because there is no evidence to show that they were treated with the reverence of the crocodiles at Komombo, so they probably weren't avatars for Sobek.
Although the linen suggested these crocodiles were mummies, there's no indication on their bodies that they underwent an elaborate embalming process. So they were likely naturally mummified before being buried.
Despite their humble final resting place, the crocodiles found at Qabat al-Hawa embody just how important these great beasts were to the citizens of ancient Egypt. It was a relationship based on equal parts fear and admiration for one of the most awe-inspiring animals on our planet.